first off want to share with you all, want to thank you all for being here as members and attendees of the conference and, getting a lot of information about how we are able to build more resilient communities that impact not only just students, but also families and, everyone involved. The information I'm going to be sharing with you today, while it is more informational in nature, I do want to encourage you to ask any questions that you may have in the chat, and I'll do my best to make sure I create space at the end of the presentation for any questions, conversations, and just dialogue between us as attendees on the call. But again, my name is Robert Palmer, and I am the Technical Assistance Program Manager here within the UCF Center for Community Schools. And just in short, within my role in the center, I support our 29 community partnership school sites throughout the entire state of Florida that really focus on leveraging partnerships to address the needs of the whole child. And as I go through the presentation today, I'll share a little bit more about our model, as well as just providing an overview of what a community school is, more information about the UCF Center for Community Schools, in addition to how we are able to support our 29 community partnership school sites as they implement the CPS model, as we refer to it as, and then also sharing more information about the pillars for community school success and the impact on wellness that community schools and specifically community partnership schools in the state of Florida have had on students and also their families and family system as a whole. And again, if you have any questions as I go through the presentation, please feel free to share those in the chat, and I'll make sure that I create some space at the end for us to have some dialogue and discussion. So first, looking at what a community school is. Now, some of you may be familiar with community schools broadly, or it may have been used in your experience in K-12. But when we talk about a community school and exactly how it's implemented in the field, a community school is really a place-based strategy that focuses on improving the equity outcomes within a community. So it's both a physical place, but it also leverages a unique set of partnerships to make sure that resources are then funneled into a school building, as we understand that typically a school building is one of the few places that everyone in the community interacts with. So really a community school is both that physical location, but also a set of partnerships coming together to make sure that the resources that can meet the needs of the community can be brought in and increase the access of members of the community to those different resources. When we look at community schools broadly throughout the entire country, there's multiple mental models of community schools that can vary in range, where it really focuses on a community development approach and improving the outcomes for the entire community, or maybe more specifically, just looking at the outcomes for students within a school building. But when we look at community schools, we typically see the community development approach that takes place at the Harlem's Kids Zone or Harlem's Children's Zone, using community centers as hubs and central locations for resources. There's also more of a university-assisted community school approach, which is used in multiple areas nationwide, where a college or university works directly with the school to create mutually beneficial partnerships that lead to increased programs and services, and also improve outcomes for students and families within the K-12 setting. Then specifically here within the state of Florida, we have our community partnership school model, which really focuses on leveraging the school building as a hub for the community, and also making sure that the resources that are brought into the school as a hub are done through partnership, leveraging multiple core partners to address the needs specific to the school, as well as the community as a whole. That way we can improve student success, not only by looking at the academics, but also those other factors that may extend beyond the school building. So in speaking about community schools, I definitely want to make sure that I share what the pillars of a community school are. Within the approaches of community schools across the nation, across the world, there's always these 4 elements that exist. And having these 4 elements in place and operating in synergy can really improve the likelihood of success at a community school. And those are collaborative leadership, which really focuses on making sure that we have leaders from multiple organizations and leaders within the school building working in collaboration with each other to make sure that students and families are always at the center of what is being implemented. We also have expanded learning, which really looks at how do we continue to build upon what instruction is taking place in the classroom environment to make sure that students can address any needs as far as the academic space or any loss of learning, which, as we know, as a result of COVID and the pandemic as a whole, that's a very important focus that will continue to be a focus moving forward in the future years. We also have wellness supports, really looking at reducing those barriers of access for students and families to make sure that they have their wellness needs met, whether that be behavioral or mental wellness resources, that could be nutritional resources, really looking at a comprehensive approach to make sure that all the wellness needs are addressed for a student as well as their family. As we understand it, in order for a student to be successful academically, they have to have some of those basic physiological needs addressed as well. And then last but definitely not least, we also have the pillar of family and community engagement, which really focuses on bringing families and members of the community into the fold to be partners in success for students. So really making sure that their voices are also heard as well. So that's just kind of a quick overview of the 4 pillars for community school success, which I'll talk a little bit more about how those come out in our community partnership school model to make sure that students have the resources that they need in order to be successful in a classroom environment. So just briefly, our vision here within the UCF Center for Community Schools is to serve as a comprehensive resource for schools in Florida, across the nation, and around the world by offering technical assistance, a university-assisted partnership, training and development, as well as assessment and evaluation of community schools. Specifically, within our 4 areas of focus, our technical assistance really looks at providing individualized support to sites and statewide support to ensure that they can implement the community partnership school model with fidelity, but also elevate those best practices of community schools broadly, With a university-assisted approach and looking at how we can leverage a college or university partner at the table as a core partner, we really look at how we can tap into the expertise of faculty members, students, and other entities that are available through a college or university partner in a way that will be mutually beneficial to both the colleges or universities, but also focuses on improving the outcomes for students through supporting the community partnership school. For example, tapping in again to those faculty members to present during our training and development events, which within the UCF Center for Community Schools, we provide monthly, quarterly, and annual events to community partnership school staff, as well as their core partners, which I'll share a little bit more about who those are in the field, and really focus on how we elevate their efforts and facilitate networking to ensure that the best practices of community schools and best practices taking place statewide can be replicated and scaled based on the needs of each individual site. And then last, but definitely not least, all of our sites go through a strength-based assessment using our community partnership school standards to determine their fidelity to the CPS model, but also their efforts to meet student needs. And this is really unique to our model and our approach when we talk about community schools broadly, but with community partnership schools here in Florida, because there's always a focus on continuous improvement. While we want to ensure that sites are meeting the standards that we have, we also want to make sure that they're able to see a pathway towards continuous growth and improvement for their students, but also their families. In year 3 of implementation, sites are able to undergo what we call a readiness assessment to highlight their effectiveness in implementing the CPS model, as well as addressing the needs for their students, where they can potentially become a UCF certified community partnership school. But if they're not able to meet that mark in year 3 of implementation, we also allow sites to go through a year 5 full certification assessment so that they can become eligible to become a UCF certified community partnership school. So that's just kind of a quick overview of the center and, the role that we play within the support of community schools broadly throughout the nation, but also specifically community partnership schools here within the state of Florida. And again, if you have any questions or comments, I definitely encourage you to place those in the chat. That way, if I can integrate them into the presentation, I will do my best to do so. But also, I can refer to them at the end of our discussion. So looking at the foundational elements of the community partnership school model, there's 4 components, and you may hear, throughout this presentation or other points if you interact with some of our colleagues in the field that are aware of community partnership schools, we kind of have a 4-4-4 approach where there's always at least 4 core partners, 4 dedicated staff positions, and they all align to the 4 pillars for community school success. That's kind of an easy way to remember the approach of community partnership schools, as well as the different elements of the model. But when we talk about having 4 core partners or more at the table, this really provides multiple opportunities to leverage resources across different organizations that also have different areas of expertise. In the next slide, I'll share a little bit more, but we have always at least 1 school district as a core partner. We have a healthcare provider as a core partner, as well as a nonprofit operator, and then a college or university as a core partner, so that there's always at least 4 at the table. Now, some of our sites may have more than 4 core partners based on their needs, but what is always foundational of any community partnership school is to have at least 4 core partners who are willing to work in collaboration to meet the needs of students and families. We also have our 4 dedicated staff positions, which include a community partnership school director, as well as a coordinator to align with each pillar for community school success. So expanded learning coordinator, a wellness coordinator, and then a family and community engagement coordinator. And this really allows for the effective leveraging of resources and coordination of programs and services that align with the needs of students and families, but also acknowledge the assets that already exist within the communities that they serve. Then we have a distributive organizational structure. And while each community partnership school site will have a cabinet that includes representation from each core partner, they'll also have other committees as well that feeds into the cabinet, such as a student leadership council, which allows students that are at the community partnership school site to have a voice in the decisions being made to improve their outcomes, but also a community leadership council as well, to make sure that the community members are also a part of that process. One of the quotes or proverbs that we typically refer to is that it can't be about us without us. And that's really thinking or going with the approach that while we may have members of our core partnership or individuals at the school that really are passionate and have great ideas about how to impact the community and the students at the school, we really need to make sure that we have the voice of the students as well as the community at the table so that things are not being done to them, but with them in collaboration. And then last but not least, we also have our certification eligibility that sites can go through as far as becoming a UCF certified community partnership school, which allows not only for recognition, but continued funding to implement the community partnership school model. So that's just an overview of the 4 model components. And on this upcoming slide, one of the things that we talk about being so important to not only having 4 core partners at the table leveraging their resources together to meet the needs of students and families is that they are operating in this approach with a long-term commitment. In order to truly create generational change, we know that it takes 25 years or more to do so. And with the community partnership school model, it really is a 2-generational approach where we look at impacting not only the success of students, but also looking at impacting the success of families and members of the community as well. That way, the students can be successful in the classroom environment, and then when they go back into their community, they can see the success taking place with their families as well as other members of the community to really create that long-term impact and that generational change that we seek to have within the CPS model. And just again, briefly with the 4 core partners, again, we have the nonprofit organization, which typically hires on the community partnership school director, as well as some of the additional positions with the coordinators housed at the school. And one of the key elements of having a nonprofit at the table and hiring that position is their collaboration with the school district, which of course, owns the building, but also has the expertise as far as the academic needs of the students and integrates the community partnership school staff into the day-to-day operations of the school. We then also have a healthcare provider as well as a part of the core partnerships that really focuses on increasing access to various wellness resources for students and families. And that could be on-site visits, preventive screenings and preventive education, or even looking at how do we maybe utilize other connections that the healthcare provider may have within their network to bring in those resources for students and families. And then last but not least, we also have the college or university partner that can be very diverse based on their institutional resources and how they're able to connect in and support the community partnership school. So just again, going in a little bit more detail about the 4 dedicated staff positions. Again, we have the community partnership school director, which supports all of the core partners in working collaboratively to impact students and families by addressing those existing needs, but also identifying opportunities to address root causes. It's not just about making sure that the needs are no longer there or reduced, but how can we eliminate them completely? And that is done by really looking at those root causes. We also have the expanded learning coordinator that focuses on programs and services that can take place before, during, or after school to build upon classroom instruction, but also expose students to various post-secondary pathways, really looking at how do we make sure that the enrichment being provided after school not only allows them to be more successful academically in their current state or grade level, but also allows them to aspire to be more and look at college and career as an opportunity in the future. We also have wellness, which in their role as a wellness coordinator, they're really the connector between students and families and the healthcare providers to identify what those needs are in terms of wellness, but also reduce barriers of access. And then last but definitely not least, we have the family and community engagement coordinator, which really focuses on bringing families and the community at large into the school to be a part of the solution and ensuring that students can be successful while also creating opportunities for adults in the community to be their own best solution in meeting their needs. For example, reducing barriers to adult education or workforce development opportunities. So really looking at that holistic approach to being able to impact student success while acknowledging that there's also opportunities to impact the community and allow for them to become more resilient despite anything that they may face. On this particular slide, this is just a brief overview of our history as far as the growth that we've had over the past, I would say 10 plus years, give or take 11 years now at this point. So in 2009, Children's Home Society of Florida and the University of Central Florida came together and really saw the need within the Central Florida community to have additional resources further connected at a school level. And that led them to traveling to Children's Aid Society in New York to see the work taking place with community schools in Harlem. With that, they came back to Florida and had some additional discussions that brought in Orange County Public Schools, as well as a healthcare provider at the time, to launch Evans as a community partnership school and really making sure that they were able to support the Pine Hills community in addressing the needs of their students. As at that time in 2011, roughly, Evans High School had a 66% graduation rate, which further on in the presentation, I'm going to share with you the immense growth that has taken place at Evans High School in terms of graduation rates. But from there, and seeing the impact that was taking place at Evans High School, state legislature saw that there was a need for expansion of community partnership schools in many other areas that were under-resourced and were also Title I schools, which allowed us to fully launch as the UCS Center for Community Schools and expand to Brevard Public Schools, Escambia Public Schools, as well as Pasco County Schools. And from there, we've just continued to grow and become better in the support that we've provided in terms of community schools and community partnership schools, which has led us to be able to also educate other legislatures during our CPS day at the Capitol, which we were able to have that in 2019. And although COVID has created some barriers, we've been able to continue to educate our state legislature and the community at large in terms of how community partnership schools are having an immense impact on students and families. On this particular slide, it's just an overview of our 29 community partnership school sites statewide. As you can see, we have a pretty large footprint throughout the entire state of Florida, where we span all the way out to the Panhandle, all the way in Panama City, looking at Parker Elementary School, and then even C.A. Weiss Elementary School, which is in Pensacola. And then we stretch all the way down to Homestead, Florida as well, down in Miami-Dade County. So we have a pretty large footprint of our 29 community partnership schools as far as the diverse communities that they serve. And it really provides us a unique opportunity to impact not only urban areas, but also rural areas and students that come from many different backgrounds, but all have the need for additional resources and supports within their community. I wanted to highlight this slide in particular as it talks about wellness supports and just understanding how wellness connects into the theme of this conference, really looking at how within the community partnership school model, having a pillar of wellness supports as a part of the larger approach with community schools is so important. And really within the CPS model, when we talk about wellness, it's about providing access to a range of health and social services that are provided on the school's campus. And really that can include looking at dental treatments, whether that is a physical standalone unit at the school's campus, or bringing in mobile dental units as well, just to support students' oral needs. Also looking at medical services, how do we increase access for students and families, whether that is looking at visits at no cost or providing a sliding scale to students and families to have their primary care needs met. Then we also have vision care as well. We know that oftentimes when a student is unable to maybe see in the classroom and be able to fully visualize everything that is on the board, that may result in other behaviors that will prevent them from being successful academically. So how do we also address their vision needs? And then of course, looking at mental and behavioral health, providing counseling to address those needs as well. Now, one thing I want to highlight on this slide is that while it states on the school campus for health and social services to be provided, we've seen that in the field that many healthcare providers and school districts may not necessarily have the capacity or physical space to really make sure they are able to see students during the school day physically on the campus of school. So as a result, many sites have a linked model where they have students access a clinic that is in near distance to them, whether it's walking with adult supervision or transportation through the various core partnerships that exist as a result of the model. So that is something that we've been able to see. Also utilizing other resources like telehealth for appointments, not only to have students seen by a professional, but also to bring families into some of those different visits if they're not able to take time off of work. That way they're still aware as to what is going on with their student and that they have their needs met as well, and being fully educated as to what is going on with their child. So just briefly, this data set is from the fiscal year 2021-22, and it highlights that despite the barriers presented by the pandemic, our CPS sites were still able to pivot and provide services to students. Without the CPS model, it may have been even more difficult to meet the needs of their students and families. But as a result, the core partnerships, specifically the school district and healthcare provider being at the table, it really has allowed to additional resources being leveraged and coordinated effectively. One area I definitely want to make sure that I highlight out of the data is really the behavioral healthcare that was still received by students as well as members of their family. We again know that the pandemic has really been a trying time for many students and families. Not only due to their experiences as far as having to be isolated, but also potentially the loss of many loved ones or members of their community. So being able to provide that behavioral health care and that mental health support, even virtually, has been so impactful to not only our students, but members of the community as well. And to build on that, one of the things that we've seen as a really highlight of success is leveraging the college or university partner to provide additional support in the space of wellness, specifically when we look at mental and behavioral health supports. So one example I want to highlight that's actually taking place here in the Central Florida area as a result of UCF being a core partner with multiple community partnership school sites in the Central Florida area in Orange County Public Schools. There's been a collaboration that has taken place that further prepares graduate students within the UCF School of Social Work to not only understand the full scope of issues that children and families bring into the school, but to ensure that they have the proper experience to support students and families when they enter the professional field while ensuring that they have the adequate supervision or external supervision to do so. So really looking at those deep, complex issues associated with experiences of trauma, poverty, and other adverse childhood experiences, making sure that our future social workers are fully prepared for what they may face in the field, while also making sure that we expand the amount of services being provided to students and families currently. So this is just kind of some brief information as far as quotes. I really want to point out this particular quote. A UCF intern was able to share that I was faced with opportunities to grow by learning to approach challenges with a social work mindset. I also practice professionalism in the field whenever encountering ethical dilemmas and establishing professional boundaries with my coworkers and clients. So, just reading that quote and hearing the power in the student being more prepared to have the right mindset as a social worker, I think that is extremely important as we prepare future professionals to work with our students and families to make sure that we are able to provide them support and being resilient from some of the experiences they may face. So I just want to definitely highlight that particular point. Also looking at UCF's Department of Counselor Education and School Psychology, there's been a lot of different collaborations that have taken place across UCF, but I wanted to highlight this particular piece as the UCF Counselor Education Department has various levels that they have students, as far as having different graduate level students with doctoral programs and master's programs, but also various counselor education tracks. So there's a mental health, a marriage and family, and then a school counseling track as well, which is similar to the structure of many other counselor education programs. But one thing that is unique is that the UCF Community Counseling Research Center and its students are required to complete a practicum or internship hours through their particular faculty member. And as a result of knowing that that's a requirement for students, their department has reached out to our community partnership school sites to look at collaborations to explore how we expand services as far as mental and behavioral health counseling, as well as marriage and family for students as well. There's also been other conversations and opportunities for individual faculty members to support the education of teachers within our community partnership schools by really focusing on how we highlight social and emotional learning and making sure that some of those practices are being implemented when not only teachers, but also community partnership school staff members are working with students, and also looking at how do we engage families as a part of that approach as well. So I know I've shared a lot of information about the community partnership school model and its structure and some of the different elements, but I think it's very important to highlight the impacts that we've been able to see so far with the community partnership school model in the state of Florida. So if the next two slides here is just going to highlight some different data points that we've been able to gather preliminarily related to community partnership schools. And then at the end, I also have a video that I think you all will appreciate greatly that is extremely impactful, talking about how community partnership schools really provide different opportunities for students and families to elevate and really have their needs addressed. Looking briefly at C.A. Weiss Elementary School, which is located in Pensacola, Florida, we've been able to see that there's been a consistent decrease in out-of-school suspensions, as well as an increase in teacher retention at the school, which was certified as a UCF certified community partnership school in 2019. And one of the things that has been shared with us in the center is that the decrease in out of school suspensions has really been as a result of teachers being more informed about some of those adverse childhood experiences and really integrating some of those approaches into how they work with students who may be sharing or having disciplinary issues. And then also even looking at, okay, we may know that a student may have a disciplinary issue, but let's really dive a bit deeper and not only address the behavior, but the cause of the behavior as well. And then on the other end, with teacher retention being increased, a lot of teachers have been able to report at C.A. White's Elementary School that they're able to focus on classroom instruction. They no longer have to be the school counselor. They no longer have to be the social worker or the nurse and all these other different pieces that were pulling them away from what they love to do most, which is provide classroom instruction. And I think that dovetails really nicely into our next slide when we talk about Endeavor Elementary School and not only the increase in teacher retention there, but also the impact that it's had on students' state assessments. So you'll see that there's been a rise in the scores for students between 2017 and 2018 versus the 2018-2019 academic school year, as well as the performance as their performance in the Florida Standards Assessment has increased. And I believe that is specifically the ELA, the English Language Arts, FSA that we are seeing the data for here. And a lot of that is due to the expanded learning supports that have been integrated into the school building that also aligns with the curriculum that is being taught in the classroom as well. So then looking at OCPS ACE, which is located here in Orlando, Florida, we've been able to, again, see the drastic reduction in discipline-based referrals, but I also want to highlight how they've been able to really focus on addressing food insecurity for their students and families. So from September 2019 to February 2020, just before the height of COVID really took grasp of our society, they were able to serve over 40 families and distribute over a ton of food to the members of their community. And I know that as a result of COVID, they were also designated as a food pickup location for other families as well, which really was helpful in knowing that sometimes many of our students, especially in our under-resourced communities, Title I schools, the stable nutrition that they're able to receive comes from being at school and receiving that school lunch or that breakfast in the morning. So that was something I definitely wanted to highlight. And then looking at Evans High School, our flagship community partnership school, as I mentioned before, going back to 2011, they were at a 64% graduation rate. But as you can see over time with the implementation of the CPS model, they've been able to increase their graduation rate steadily, and they are now at a 98% graduation rate as of 2019-2020. So while that information does not reflect the graduating class of 2021, it does highlight how there's been a continuous growth with the graduation rate connected to the community partnership school model and having all those comprehensive resources that focus on not only expanded learning, but also wellness supports that may be interfering with the student's ability to focus during the school day. Also looking at bringing in family members as well to be a part of the process and be part of the solution in ensuring students can be successful academically. Now, I know I've shared a lot of information, a lot of context behind community partnership schools and some of the impact data, but I think what would be most impactful is if I share with you this video that was created by our strategic partner, Children's Home Society of Florida, to highlight exactly how the community partnership school at Evans High School is impacting not only the students, but also the families in that area.
I was going through a lot.
Sorry about that.
My brother being murdered, so my little brother being in prison. Only thing was, our mama did support us. So that what really made us turn to the streets.
This is the reality of forgotten communities in Florida, the hopelessness of children bleeding into our cities and draining potential. But imagine having the power to improve a neighborhood and create real economic impact by simply transforming a Title I battleground school into an academic center of excellence with an 88% graduation rate. It's not magic. It's a cost-effective investment called a community partnership school. At Children's Home Society of Florida, we've created a unique model that offers kids and families a helping hand with a proven path to success.
We have children that go home on the weekends that don't have food. And so we have a food pantry. We have clothing facility where we're really making sure that we are trying to help meet the needs to lift up our families, to give them that hope for the future that they can make a difference.
These kids are dealing with complex adult problems, but community partnership schools are eliminating these barriers to education. Through long-term community partnerships, students have year-round and after-hour access to services like counseling, healthcare, tutoring, as well as mentorship programs that not only keep children off the streets, but transform the entire community.
Oh, the difference at Evan High School as a community partnership school is night and day. We've seen disciplinary referrals drop as far as 50% when they became a community partnership school, which is a huge feat for them to conquer.
The safety results are real, and it's happening at every community partnership school. At Weiss Elementary in Pensacola, the number of disciplinary referrals dropped by 43% and suspensions were cut in half in the first year. Focused on lifelong success, our community partnership schools are also engineering a career pipeline in the most distressed neighborhoods, creating real economic results. At Evans High School in Orlando, there's been a 4-to-1 return on investment, and the rising graduation rates have resulted in $1.6 million of increased income for the region.
Working closely with the community partnership school has allowed me and my business to get involved at the community level in ways that I never would have thought possible. And there is a direct impact in terms of improving the community, which turns around, makes my business more marketable, and makes business much better.
To give me hope, because around in this area, we don't have hope like that. You know, some kids give up on themselves and they give up on their dreams. With me and having this internship, I can, it's like I'm able to keep pushing because I'm actually around people that actually been places that I want to go. So that just gives you the extra push and the extra motivation that you need to succeed in life.
Help us remind kids and communities that we haven't given up on them, and together we're investing in their future. At CHS, we're proving community partnership schools deliver solutions that change lives.
So I definitely wanted to make sure that I closed on that extremely powerful video, highlighting how the community partnership school at Evans has really impacted not only the students, but also the families and the community as a whole. With that, that is actually the end of the presentation. I'm going to stop sharing my screen and also stop the recording so we can have any conversation, any questions or discussion that would be helpful as well. So giving you just one moment.